Taxes was taxing. Now taxes is relaxing when you file for free.
I can file for free? TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free. I can file for free.
Now this is taxes. File for free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your maximum refund. No schedules except for earned income tax credit, child tax credit, and student loan interest. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed, Scandalous, Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and we are back with another episode of Bad Teachers. This our 11th episode, and today I'm going to tell you about the exploits of Sandra Beth Geisel, who went by Beth Geisel. So Beth Geisel was a 42-year-old English teacher at Christian Brothers Academy in Colony, New York, when this incident I'm about to tell you about took place in 2005. Now, Christian Brothers Academy was a very prestigious private school in that area, and Beth accepted the job as the English teacher at the school because her teenage son was a student there, and she liked the idea of being around her soon-to-be adult son. Beth was a mother of 4 children, including that son, and she was still married, but had separated from her husband, who was a prominent bank president in the New York area. Incidentally, they had separated the year prior to this incident. So we're going to go back to that prior year, which was 2004, because this is when the problems seemingly started to surface for Beth Geisel, at least publicly. It was December 18th of that year that Geisel was arrested for DWI. Her blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit at 0.18. And 2 days later, she pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of driving while impaired. She was fined $300 and her driver's license was suspended for 90 days. Now, at the time of her arrest, Geisel actually admitted to being on the way to pick up her young daughter. So right there, you get a good indication of her bad decision-making, right? Trust me, it gets worse as we go along. And it's interesting to note that although the school was aware of the arrest, they took no action as it relates to Geisel and considered it an isolated incident. So time goes on, and in February of 2005, Christian Brothers Academy students, they travel to Florida for a school trip. And I'm going to tell you about that trip later. But allegedly, police discover that Beth Geisel provided them on that school trip with alcohol, among some other things that you're going to hear about. Then on June 11th of 2005, a neighborhood resident calls police after noticing a parked car in that neighborhood that looked suspicious. So police respond to this call, and in the back seat of the car, they discover a partially nude Beth Geisel and a fully nude 17-year-old student, along with a bottle of banana-flavored rum sitting next to them. However, police at the time, they determined the student was actually 17 years old, which was the legal consent age in New York at that time. And after calling the boy's father to come pick him up, they send Geisel on her way. Then, of course, as you would expect, the news gets around the school, likely because the boy was telling his friends about it. And a week later, school officials fire Beth Geisel from the school, and they even sent a letter out to parents regarding the incident. And as happens in many cases that I've covered here on Bad Teachers, once word gets out, people come forward. And in this case, a 16-year-old boy, at the urging of his parents, he comes forward and he reports to police that he had 2 sexual encounters with Beth Geisel. The 16-year-old told police that they had sex the first time on May 15th of 2005 in the teacher's home, and the second time just 2 weeks later on May 28th of 2005, this time in the press box at the school's football field. He also told police that, quote, she told me that she knew it was wrong, but she had been thinking about me for a while. He further told police, we then took our clothes off and we had sex. The 16-year-old then completely shocked police when he said he took turns with another student who was 17 as they ran a train on Geisel. And I definitely want to note that between the time that Geisel was fired from the school and the 16-year-old student was singing his song to police, Geisel moved from New York to Summit, New Jersey, very quickly, within the same week. That's not something people who aren't guilty do. And if you'll remember, at the start of this, I mentioned a Florida school trip in which Beth allegedly provided alcohol to students. Well, I'm going to go ahead and detail that for you. So on June 27th of 2005, a letter from, quote, concerned parents, and that's how the letter was signed, was sent to the board of Christian Brothers Academy. And it accused Geisel of being so irresponsibly intoxicated during that trip that she was unable to stand, and 4 high school juniors had to carry her back to her hotel. Now imagine that. You're the fucking teacher. The letter went on to say, after the trip, that students were circulating pictures of Beth Geisel in a scantily clad bikini, posing with some of the teens in their bathing suits while she had her hand on one of the teens' buttocks. So before we go any further, it's very important to note, and after I note this, I'm going to explain to you why. But I need to note that Sandra Beth Geisel was extremely attractive and, in addition, was very voluptuous, very large breasts that I don't think were God-given. Now, why does this matter? Well, it's twofold. First, when you're a teacher and you're drunk around a bunch of testosterone-filled 16, 17-year-old boys in a scantily clad bikini, and you have, let's just say, very ample breast bursting out of said bikini, that's intentional, and that's premeditated. Second, the looks matter because of the sentences these attractive teachers get versus those that society may consider not as attractive. It's totally skewed, actually, and you'll see why I bring all this up at the end of this one. But the reason I mentioned all of this is because a couple of times in the podcast ratings, a couple of listeners kind of came at me a little bit and accused me of focusing too much on the looks, that the looks didn't matter. Well, all I can say to you is if you don't get it, I can't help you any further. The looks do sadly matter, and the statistics show the better looking that you are, the easier sentence that you get. It is a fucking fact. So I'm going to continue to raise awareness to that fact, whether you like it or not. So I'll just continue with this one. Now, also in that letter, these concerned parents, they mentioned that Geisel would frequently have what they termed as closed-door visitations with a handful of boys in her office. And this office contained no windows, so anything, in their opinion, and the point that they're making, could have been going on in that office, and honestly, probably was. So while police are gathering evidence for the incident with that 16-year-old in July of 2005 that was reported, Geisel checks herself in to alcohol rehab. Then, 1 month later, on August 1st of 2005, Beth Geisel was finally arrested by police and she was charged with 2 counts of third-degree rape and 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor. All of those charges being related to that 16-year-old student. Now, also during the investigation, it was discovered she had sex at different times with at least 3 17-year-old students and the 16-year-old. But due to New York's law at the time making the age of consent 17, there was no separation because you were a teacher. Didn't matter. Technically, anybody 17 years old that she had sex with, she had no ramifications for. Thus, no charges. Now, considering her charges included 2 counts of third-degree rape, her bail was pretty shocking to me. She actually posted bail the next day on a dismal $20,000 bail. And for these charges, she was facing 16 years in prison. Each charge carried a 4-year prison sentence. So her bail conditions consisted of several things. She had to observe a 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. She could have no contact with any students from the school. She had to undergo psychiatric and substance abuse evaluations, and she would not be allowed to leave the state of New York, which was kind of a problem for her because she moved to New Jersey, but she did get a hotel room in New York to abide by the conditions of her bail. And it was also during this time that investigators were struggling to locate Geisel's husband, who was the bank president of a large bank in New York. They did discover that even though Beth and her husband were separated, he was paying her $1,000 a month as per an arrangement, and he had custody of the children, though she had an arrangement with him where she would see the kids several times a week. Eventually, her estranged husband did agree to meet with investigators, and he was never suspected of knowing anything about any of this. So on August 19th of 2005, just 19 days after her arrest, Geisel again provides an amazing display of her bad judgment when police pull her over in a drug-plagued neighborhood in Albany, New York, with a complete stranger that police actually watched her pick up at 8:30 in the morning, completely shit-faced, and she was again arrested, this time for her second DWI. It was also discovered that she left her 2 youngest children, who she had visitation with at the time, alone at that motel she was staying at, while she left on an apparent bender. And those kids were 9 and 12 years old at the time. Apparently, they were awakened by a fire alarm. This was at 6 a.m. that morning, and had called another family member to come and get them. And her blood alcohol content was tested for this second DWI and registered at 0.13. So she was very drunk. So it's back to jail for Geisel, and she was pretty distraught about that. So distraught, in fact, she was placed on suicide watch. And I found it interesting that on her jail intake form, she listed her employment as a writer. Not sure what that was all about. And of course, because she violated the conditions of her bond was revoked, and she had to sit inside a jail cell until her hearing. And that hearing does take place on September 2nd of 2005. And during this hearing, Geisel actually waives her immunity, and she testifies on her own behalf for 2 hours, which, huge mistake on her part. Because when you testify on your own behalf to a grand jury, you waive your right to any protection of your testimony being used against you in a criminal trial, should you get what's known as a true bill indictment. So Geisel initially, which in this case, she does get indicted. And initially, Geisel plays hardball while she's awaiting her trial. And she attempted to turn the tables on prosecutors as well as her lawyer. who in a radio interview actually insinuated that the 16-year-old may be criminally liable. Her lawyer also stated that Geisel was too drunk to give consent and that the 16-year-old who was at her home took advantage of her in her drunken state and essentially raped her. Now, of course, this is total bullshit, but a great example of the lows that people will stoop to in order to get themselves out of trouble nonetheless. I mean, flipped it completely around. But Beth Geisel's charade did not last long. Eventually, she did see the light, and on September 27th of 2005, she takes a plea deal, and she pleaded guilty to 1 count of third-degree rape and was sentenced to just 6 months in jail after being found guilty. And her attorney, he said the only reason she even pleaded guilty was to avoid a media circus. Now, of course, the prosecutors, they came under fire after this ridiculous deal, and they actually make a piss-poor attempt at attempting to defend that sentence, saying she will be in jail and she will have to register as a sex offender upon leaving jail, which, yeah, registering as a sex offender is a big deal. And her time spent in jail, to me, is kind of ridiculous. So it's off to prison for Geisel, but not for long. Due to her time served prior to being found guilty, police release Beth Geisel from prison just 1 fucking month later. A reporter for the New York affiliate WRGB, he said that Geisel looked fresher and less hungover. And he also reported that she told the court, "I recognize my mistakes and I'm sorry. Take full responsibility." Her attorney added the 16-year-old is the victim in a statutory sense only. He certainly was not victimized by you in any sense of the word. You misunderstood attention as affection and failed to realize that you were being manipulated and sexually abused, and you became the playmate. He further added they demeaned and sometimes ridiculed you, putting your calls on speakerphone. They considered you a playmate. You sensed and you knew what was going on, but you did not extricate yourself, even though you had a son at the same school and in the same grade. The statement that attorney made pissed off the boy's parents, the victims in this case. The accuser's attorney said the family is disappointed with the judge's statement that Miss Geisel was a victim in this situation and that she was, in fact, the one sexually abused. That statement to them is an outrage, and no shit. It is an outrage. It's disgusting that an attorney would even say that. Then, on November 30th of 2005, one of the teen boys breaks his silence and said that Geisel was a friend that you have sex with. That was his quote. The teen said his 3-month affair with Beth Geisel began on a bus after a school ski trip in the previous winter when he was 17 years old. He said, "We did some things on the back of the bus. That's where it all started." He estimated the two had sex 10 to 11 times, including in his bedroom. He told Inside Edition, "I don't know if I loved her. That's a strong word. She was a good friend to me, a friend that you have sex with." Michael said he ended the affair when he met a girl his own age. Michael said Geisel never said the affair was wrong, just, quote, crazy. I agree with that, but I would say it's wrong too, Beth Geisel. Michael's mother expressed disappointment in her son, saying he knows right from wrong and I raised him better than this. Michael's mother said it was wrong of the judge to portray Geisel as a victim, and she is most angry with Geisel. She said, "I just wanted to take her by the face and just punch the living heck out of her," unquote. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. As a matter of fact, a lot of bit to 19 years later. This is in January of 2024. And a civil trial gets scheduled to begin in which 3 teenage boys, which at this time are in their 30s, they're seeking compensation from Geisel, who now goes by the last name Rogers. And the way that they were able to do this was New York lifted a statute of limitations on sex crimes involving minors. So that is also how some of Sean Diddy Combs cases that were very, very old these lawsuits are now able to surface because they lifted these statute of limitation laws. Now, in this lawsuit, they allege Rogers was a sexual predator and that the school was negligent for not preventing what happened. So this lawsuit starts progressing, and Rogers, who is Beth Geisel, she goes by Beth Rogers now, she has to be deposed. And in that deposition, she says she suffered 2 strokes and lives in a small rural community in Arkansas, where she grew up. She testified that she suffered that stroke in 2012 and experienced another one later that would require heart surgery, which she underwent in 2023. Rogers acknowledged that what she had done was wrong and that she was, quote, committing a crime. Rogers said during the deposition, "I was under the influence. It's not an excuse, but an explanation of some sort of alcoholism, a major addiction to alcohol. It is what it is." She said addiction affects people differently. It's a medical condition and it affects your mind and body. So you're being affected when you're in that state. It also affects your decision-making and discerning. I would say, of all things, common sense, emotional stability, the whole 9. Rogers tried to lay some responsibility on the boys that she acknowledged having sex with. She said, "I'm not blaming them, but the version of being," I don't know how to say this without it sounding, I don't know how to say it. "I was flirted with and talked to in that way a lot. This is why I pleaded guilty to what happened, because I'm not in denial about what happened. It was very stressful for me personally because that's not my character of what I would ever want to be or do." So again, she's doing what narcissists do and people that rape kids do. She's blaming it on these teens and basically saying, well, they were flirting with me. I just couldn't take it anymore. Rogers said that her alcoholism had begun to spiral out of control. Her DWI arrest that summer was the second in a year. She testified that she had taken antidepressant medication off and on over the years and had last worked as a part-time yoga instructor in 2022, which incidentally, y'all, I came across some current pictures of her related to her yoga instructing, and I'll upload those on the Patreon page along with several other files you may find interesting. And look, I got one more thing for y'all today. This is a little different. When I'm researching these episodes, a lot of times I'll come across other future episodes and I get caught in this rabbit hole that I can't get out of, right? Well, when I was researching the other day for an upcoming Bad Teachers episode, I actually came across something, and it doesn't involve teacher students, but it does involve teacher. And I'm like, oh, I have got to read these to my listeners. I knew y'all would like this. It's just wild. And it involves a principal of a New York school. So I'm going to reference the 2 articles that I have because they really paint the best picture. And this took place in May of 2014 when an article came out in the New York Post, and the headline says, "Principal removed after sex in school probe." A Queens principal was yanked from her school amid shocking allegations she had sex with a guard, an assistant principal, and a parent. Had tryst in school while classes were in session, and had photos of her sexcapades on department laptops. Annie Schmaltz-Cephala, 35, principal of the 7th to 12th grade Robert Wagner Secondary School of Arts and Technology in Long Island City, New York, was escorted from school Thursday as investigators seized computers and other electronics from her home and office. Quote, "We are appalled by the disturbing allegations and acted swiftly to remove the principal while the matter is under investigation." This from a Department of Education spokesman. This type of behavior is completely unacceptable for any employee, they said. Her sudden removal comes after a romance gone bad with a student's dad. The angry ex turned over 3 Department of Education laptops he obtained while living with Cephala, including MacBooks containing photos of her in racy lingerie and in various sex acts, including a threesome. Now, this angry former student's dad also gave investigators a video and audio tape in which a woman he identified as Cephala acknowledged engaging in oral sex with an NYPD school safety agent in the school security office and with a visiting assistant principal in a book storage room during school hours. "I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I thought it was okay," she told the furious dad in the taped conversation after he accused her of cheating on him. Then you hear him in the tape say, quote, "You gave him a blowjob while my child was in the building," unquote. The dad, a 40-something entrepreneur, also gave excerpt from a letter he says Cephala wrote, admitting she hooked up twice with what she called an old lover. The second time was a visit to my school that led to a sexual encounter which included a brief oral sex in a hidden location, the letter stated. The dad, whose name is being withheld to protect his child's privacy, said he came forward because Cephala, the mother of a toddler son, played me for a fool. Miss Cephala clearly used her power and position as a principal to seek several sexual partners at her school, he charged. This racy photo of Cephala was found on her school computer. The principal helped the dad financially, once giving him $10,000 plus $500 and $300 money orders. Her salary is $136,000 a year. On April 11th of 2013, she testified in Queens Family Court as a character witness for the dad in a custody battle. She spoke as both his child's principal and his girlfriend. "So far, our relationship has been discreet and people don't know about it," she testified, insisting that his child would get no special treatment. City police does not forbid educators from dating colleagues or parents of students. However, if favoritism or mistreatment occurs, the employee could be cited for a conflict of interest. Having sex inside a school or placing sexual images on school equipment could lead to misconduct charges. An insider said it was highly unusual for a principal to be removed pending a probe and indicates the allegations of extreme misconduct. But on a Facebook post last July, she posted a photo of herself with the father, naming him and declaring, with a heart icon, "A single dad walked into the office of my school and swept me off my feet." Cephala took down her Facebook page after the New York Post called to ask about the scandal. "I can't talk without permission," she said. Cephala filed for divorce last summer and moved in with the student's father. They split up in March, and a divorce is pending. And then just the next day, this article came out. Second principal booted amid school sex probe. A Bronx assistant principal has been booted from his post for traveling to a Queens school allegedly to have sex with the principal there, as sex between the pair surfaced on Tuesday. Danny Velasquez, an assistant principal, has been reassigned pending a city department probe into his alleged sexcapades with Annie Cephala, which were reported first by the New York Post. Cephala, principal of Robert Wagner's Secondary School of Arts and Technology, had already been reassigned amid the shocking allegations she had sex with 2 men, including Velasquez, at her school during class hours. Cephala's ex-boyfriend, the dad of a student at her school, described for the Post alleged raunchy texts between Cephala and Velasquez, including one in which he wrote, "Next time I want to fuck you in the office," unquote. Cephala allegedly responded, "First, you have to," unquote. Cephala flatly denied the allegations, telling the Post on Tuesday she never had sex inside the school and is simply the victim of her ex, who used her money and then exposed her kinky hobbies when she quit paying his way. The Queen's school principal said her jilted ex-lover was trying to produce a reality show about his life. "I thought he loved me and he was protecting me," she said. "The reality was I was being played for a fool." Cephala said he hacked into her computers and cell phones to stir up drama as part of a $60,000 development deal he was supposed to have with Bravo. But when he allegedly found text messages between Cephala and Velasquez that suggested they had sex at the school, along with pictures of her engaged in sex acts, she said her ex threatened to expose her. She wound up giving him $8,000 to pay for rent and child support for his kids. "I considered going to authorities and lawyers about everything, but I was just so afraid of all the threats he made against me and how it would ruin my life and ruin the life of everyone that I knew if I didn't keep supporting him." Cephala said when she finally ended the relationship, the scorned ex approached investigators with lewd photos and text messages he allegedly found on her Department of Education issued cell phones and laptops, claiming she got down and dirty at the school. The ex turned over audio and video in which a woman identified as Cephala admitted to engaging in oral sex with a school safety agent and Velasquez in a book storage room during school hours. She said she was forced to say those things, which she claimed never really happened. Cephala is estranged from her husband. She said Velasquez isn't married. And oh, what a fucking mess that was. But I thought you would get some entertainment out of that, and it's a little more light than students having sex with teachers. At least these are consenting adults. But man, 3 guys right there in the school. Crazy. And that's all I got for you today. Hey, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/exposed podcast files. We offer commercial-free early release episodes, bonus episodes, ton of files, and even quarterly gifts for our top tier members. And make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening so you can be alerted to the podcast when it drops. We do a ton of emergency drops as news surfaces on topics we cover. You want to make sure you don't miss those, so make sure you subscribe. Thank you to all my supporters. Thank you to everyone that shares the show, comments on the show on the Facebook page, and y'all show me all the love in the world. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And until next time, for Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.